when they put this through in regulation. The same theory that applies with the federal constitution in the states. Many of you may have heard a while back about the Kelo decision. And it comes out and they say that if the state used to be able to take private property from someone, they had to take it for a public use. You're going to build a school, you're going to build a road, you're going to build a library, something the public's going to use. Then the Kelo decision came out and said, you know what, you can take it for a public good. That store that exists there, they're only bringing in $10,000 a year in taxes. We'd like to see the government go in and take that from them and put up a bigger store, a private store, and have them bring in $100,000 a year in taxes. I think that is anathema to the ideas that our constitutional founders had when they set up the ability to have that power in the Constitution. And here I would disagree when my good friend, the delegate, says that the calorie counting could not have been handled or addressed by looking at the Constitution through the eyes of the founders. I believe it was very easy. Government should not be interfering with our daily lives. Government is granted very specific powers, and those are all the powers. And I don't see anywhere in the Constitution where the power is given to government to count calories that we go to eat. I disagree that the Constitution, you can't look at it in its original writing and come to that conclusion. Now, the principle currently that I was talking about with the Kelo is that when you go to the counties, or the state, excuse me, the professor indicated, the state government can say, you know what, even though now it's been ruled that you have the ability to take private property, the government can take the private property for a government good, not a government use, we can, at the state level, pass legislation that says we don't allow that. We say, here's an amendment, and I've tried several times to put the bill in, that limits the power of our state to take private property only for a public use. So even though the courts have said under the Constitution, we give this, you as local official can give more rights to your citizens. You can go to your state officials and say, we would like this in there, and you're allowed to give more rights. You can't give less, but you can give more. States, I don't want to be redundant, these are things that were gone over by the other delegates, excuse me, the delegate professor. There's another question that's currently going on that deals with the Constitution. Many of you may not even know about. We just finished a special session 2 or 3 days ago. Maryland State Constitution, and this is deja vu all over again. A few years ago, we had a special session, and the Senate adjourned more than 3 days before the Constitution under Article 3, Section 25 says, neither house shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days at any one time. And it goes on to say, nor go to any other place. That's done so that neither the Senate or the House can control the other by saying, we're leaving unless you do what we say. So, the Senate just adjourned while we were there. They went out on August the 10th at 6:26 until August the 14th at 7 p.m. And they actually came in later than that. That's more than 3 days. The Constitution says you can't do that. So when the senator raises it, now I did this a few years ago. We fought this for the longest time. Court comes back and says, well, after the end of a 26-page opinion, the question is too political to answer. So they give us a 26-page opinion and say, the question is too political to answer. At that time, the reason there was a difference is there was a document. And the document, when it came up, it had been backdated 1 day. When it came across, I said, well, how could you possibly have this date on that document when the Senate didn't know until the next day we were going to be out for it and not finish what we're supposed to do, so they couldn't have asked on the first day, they wouldn't have known until the second. So the question became, could the Speaker of the House sign a letter to the Senate saying we accept your request to be out for more than 3 days without there being a vote of either house. The court said, in that instance, we're going to leave it up to your internal rules to decide whether or not the letter signed by the Speaker office to the Senate President saying that that constitutes a vote on each is up to you. In this instance, today, what just happened 3 days ago, they did it again, even after all these lawsuits and all this fight. And this time, there's no letter. So the courts won't be able to say, we leave it up to you to figure out whether or not that document constitutes a vote. So that's out there right now, and it's literally when you go home, you'll see in the Sun paper, there's this starting to broil. And the question is going to become, were they in violation of the Constitution? And if they were, what result does that have on just passing the gaming legislation and whether or not that even goes onto the ballot? So what probably is going to happen is the courts again are going to say, like they did the last time, unfortunately, you know, even if you're right, we're not going to make them give back $1.5 billion in taxes that, you know, you're arguing over, so it might be just too political to answer. That's not the way things are supposed to go. But if you pay close attention to what's going on, and you watch and listen to the Constitution, when I went to law school, and when I came out, and we go to court, one of my judges says, you know, very rarely are you ever going to need to cite to a Constitution. It's just not going to happen. You're going to have a local code and such. Well, the first book I pick up is the Constitution. You look in there and you find, guess what? It's not just something to be ignored. That's in there for a reason. So if we can say, well, ignore that when the Senate takes off for 3 days without getting permission and having a vote and continues to hold things, and we allow that kind of arrogance to take place in the Senate or the House, what other parts of the Constitution will be ignored next? We have to hold accountable these documents. Now, there is one part, two minutes remaining, there is one part of Maryland's Constitution that does match with what our federal Constitution says. That's Article 6 of our Bill of Rights. And Article 6 of our Bill of Rights says that all persons who are invested with their legislative or executive powers of government are trustees of the public. And as such, you're accountable for your conduct. Wherefore, whenever the ends of government are perverted and public liberty is manifestly endangered, and all the means of redress are ineffectual, the people may and of right ought to reform the old and establish a new government. The doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of man. That's the things that you should have in the Constitution, not the Baltimore City Parking Regulations.